Welcome to Oncology Revolution, where science meets care to transform the cancer journey. We explore evidence-based strategies to enhance quality of life, promote longevity, and empower patients and professionals to thrive beyond cancer.
Welcome to another episode of the Oncology Revolution Podcast. My name is Raquel Maris. I'm an occupational therapist and project coordinator at the European School of Lifestyle Oncology. Today's guest is someone who has been challenging how we think about cancer care and patient advocacy. Matthew Zachary is a brain cancer survivor, the founder of Stupid Cancer, host of the award-winning podcast Out of Patients, and producer of the Cancer Mavericks documentary series. He now leads Matthew Zachary worldwide, helping organizations better understand patients on their terms. Matthew, it's a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. I can't thank you enough for inviting me here. Thank you.
Well, let's start with a huge topic in healthcare, trust. Trust plays a central role in oncology care between patients, professionals, and the wider system. And Matthew, you have been raising your voice about this for years. What were the early challenges in amplifying the patient voice?
Well, yeah, trust is typically earned and not traditionally just given out on day one. I think that's just a human condition. Trust has to be earned. And in healthcare, especially in oncology, you're kind of thrown into a store that you never wanted to shop in before. So you're immediately have trust issues because you didn't plan to be there and you're not quite sure who's got your back. So that's kind of how I started to really think in the early days when I was first getting into patient advocacy, was where could the trust possibly be? And where the trust isn't, how might it be possible to build some? And when you're basically being told you have 6 months to live, or we don't know what to do with you, or here's your regimen. I'll put this in context. I was diagnosed in the 1990s, so there was no internet. So we didn't even have anywhere to go to be mistrustful of. We just had to be generically distrustful and hope that the treatment we were getting and the doctor we had were doing the right thing on our behalf. And that's what we just had to do. There really were no additional objective or subjective platforms to get, other thoughts, opinions, even know, should I get a second opinion? What did that word really mean? And today it's different worse or different better, because there's too much stuff that can often skew where your trust starts to go and develop. So there's different versions of that trust too. There's trust in who your doctor is. How do you believe their intentions? Are you supposed to believe their intentions? Is it generational, where you just instinctively think the doctor is God and they're going to do the right thing for you? Or do you go with a natural disdain or conjectured curiosity that you have the ability to question certain things in advance? But then there's trust in, like in America, it's a different story, your health insurance. There's trust in marketing and advertising and communications. In our country, we have these ridiculous pharma ads on TV all the time that we don't have in any other country except I think New Zealand. They're there. So how do you know what to trust when you're being bombarded with information on decision-making, what's right for you? There is no one specific answer, because every human is an N of one. But at the end of the day, I like to believe that peer support, peer-to-peer support, which is beyond anecdotal at this point, after all these years of evidence-based examinations of peer-to-peer support in decision-making, clinical, non-clinical, lifestyle, support groups, mental health. That to me is going to be the true arbiter of where trust comes from in scenarios where you're not quite sure where you should be. Long answer to a short question.
No, it's a perfect answer. So thank you so much for sharing it. And also thank you for sharing a bit of your story. It's very inspiring, all the things that you have already lived and the work that you have been done. And even with the progress that you have mentioned, where do you still see the biggest trust gaps between patients and the system?
Again, it's a very American answer I can give you because that's what I know and that's why I'm here. It's this endless bombardment of marketing, advertising, communications, um, direct sales, banners, flyers, postcards, either convincing you that you're sick when you're not, or telling you what you should think when you don't need to be able to be prodded in those directions. And it really has been shown to skew in a negative way what the jargon is calling shared decision making, which basically means that you and your doctor should decide things together. But if you're coming in with an unobjective view because you're being thrown questionably circumstantial things to trust versus what the doctor has been hippocratically trained to do in your behalf, where does that constraint sort of try to untangle itself? So it really, at this point now, and especially, I mean, as of this recording, this this country, we are unraveling our vaccines, we're unraveling our science. I can't understand how this is what our country's become, but we are recording this now. This is happening now. The erosion of trust is just getting deeper and deeper and deeper. So trusting in science is tip of the spear. You should trust the science first and foremost. So if I had to answer this question with one answer, it's science. Trust the science.
I completely agree with you. And at the heart of your work is storytelling. So let's focus on this. And Matthew, you have given your own path on media, or how do you see storytelling shaping advocacy? And also, why do unfiltered, raw patient stories have such power compared to polished campaigns, like you said, in marketing?
Well, so before I was working in advocacy, before I started Stupid Cancer, I worked in the advertising industry. So plan A was I was supposed to be a concert pianist. I got sick. I couldn't play anymore. Plan B became I worked in advertising, marketing, media, branding, all sorts of creative stuff. And I really got to understand where authenticity mattered in communications. And again, 20, 30 years ago, you kind of sort of believed a little more what you saw on television. You didn't really have I mean, we had cigarette commercials on TV in the 50s in America, right? Doctors endorse cigarettes. Let's go back for some reference in this country that it was okay. They smoking everywhere. Oh, doctors prefer Winston. Of course they do, right? So the erosion of trust in that obvious, the verisimilitude of what's just thrown out there, we've broken through the veil of that. And the rise of advocacy has been kind of tantamount to that erosion of where really trust can live in the authenticity of these things. But stories have to be done in a way that's very different these days. Originally, you would tell your story for any one of like three or four reasons. Your own personal therapy. Get it out there. Write it down. I just need to vent. I don't care who reads it, who sees it, who thinks it. My own private diary. I got to get it out there. Then you do it for maybe this can help somebody do that. You write a book, you write post a show, whatever. Back when you were a blogger, everyone was a blogger back then, or become part of a community where you're sharing things with people as a larger voice and mass, and the authenticity comes out because you're not shilling for a company, you're not promoting a medicine, you're just saying this is what happened to me. And the fourth, of course, is if you're going to take like a larger role like I did and become a leader to, millions of people. And well, you have to really carefully think about what you're going to be saying. But at the end of the day, I'm a theater kid. Anyone that's done theater, appreciates musicals, knows that all the world's a stage and everything is theater. And when I give coaching and I talk to people about what they're going to say and what they do, if you're building an intention that isn't like for personal, I get it. Say what you want, write what you want. This is for you. You need to get this out of yourself. No one wanted this in you. Get it out of you. But if you're going to be speaking to congressional leaders or industry or influencers or people in policy, here's the secret that they don't tell you. No one cares what you have to say until you make them feel something. And that's the secret of theater. You play to the crowd, not what you want to do. You act to inspire who's out there. And that's a craft. So storytelling and telling your story are two completely different ways to think about communications through grief, crisis, problems, whatever it's going to be, no matter what, cancer, anything else. Um, in the gun lobby, again, stupid America in the gun lobby, there's telling your story about what a tragedy, but then there's storytelling and how this affects the community. Where are the economic benefits? Where are the political barriers? Like, how do you get people to feel something that you want? It's basically the author, Dale Carnegie. I would encourage, if anyone hasn't heard of him, famous American industrialist, pros and cons, railroad tycoon guy, bit of a robber baron, but he wrote a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's a great book when taken in context about how to give people what they want on your terms. And that's really telling your story versus storytelling. And how do you flip the two between themselves? So I look for authenticity in terms of storytelling. Telling your story is like, I'm going to get up there and just, like it's like, when you deflate a balloon, you just open up, like that's just, you want to just vomit all over everybody because you have a lot to say. It's not really thoughtfully done, but it feels great for you to get it out there. But then there's like the very specifically targeted way to speak, to pause, and to elicit and to orate. And the authenticity comes from within that. And those are the things that move mountains more quickly than the deflating balloon. And in the patient space, in the marketing space, we see through the veil of these stupid commercials every single day. No one should be happy on chemo. And yet these commercials that whether you've seen or anyone's seen, just go to YouTube and find that they're nonsensically pandering. These breast cancer patients dancing in a circle in a wheat field somewhere in the sun, that's not us. You see right through that. But you start to look at the way we communicate as real people. That's where the authenticity exists, and that's where we can see right through the veil and get a sense of what's going to help us make better decisions and be part of a community as one doing X, Y, and Z.
Well, thank you so much for your perspective. It was amazing to listen to you about this topic, and I really agree with you in so many ways that you have shared. And right now, I would like to listen to your perspective in what do you think clinicians and healthcare organizations often miss or could learn from to really listening to patients' narratives.
Well, I want to start by just thanking the clinicians and the health workers and the nurses and the social workers and the care coordinators. You do invisible hero work every day. If you take the Hippocratic Oath or some variant thereof, you are choosing a life that is intentional and you know what you're getting yourself into. And you don't get thanked enough, you don't get seen enough, you don't get recognized enough for doing the work that is for a very elite handful of people. It's like joining the army. You are signing up for something that you know is going to be absolutely tough. It's going to ruin you at 3 in the morning. You're going to have an entire life of just heavy emotional baggage that you're choosing to go into. So there's a balance between castigation, appreciation, and opportunity with regard to the relationships that the healthcare system and the humans that work in it that are trying to save your life every day and make your life a little better every day, and where the teachable moments can be. I would argue the big divide is empathy. And it's been it's like the only constant is change, but empathy really is a non-constant. It's so variable depending on who you are, how you were raised, your environment, your attitude, your perspective. And I've been in many conversations where they ask, specifically in the physician world, would you rather have a physician who's a mechanic that knows everything back to back or an empath that's kind of so-so? And honestly, I'd rather have a mechanic with no personality that just knows how to take care of me. And I'll figure out the empath stuff with the nurse or the someone else. But some people really want the balance. I'd rather risk having someone that's not a surgical savant that just knows everything right away and having a deep conversation with someone who understands what I'm going through. It's a brilliant philosophical conversation to have about the role of empathy in this space. And, nursing is a different category. Of course, clearly that is born of empathy. Florence Nightingale, empathy. That's what the whole role of social work is, empathy. It's based on who you are, not what you have. So that's the main divide, I would think, in terms of the physician world, is appreciating that you're there to do a job in service of Hippocrates to save lives and do no harm. But it wouldn't hurt to recognize that you should kind of have a fair and balanced relationship with your patients that doesn't do you emotional damage, especially in the pediatric oncology space. These human beings go to work and watch kids die every day. That's a burden, but you can't help but not feel parental to them, and yet you have to have a level of strategic apathy and be a mechanic for it. So, in recognition of that, this is not a perfect system; it's a holistic system. That's my answer.
Thank you again for your perspective. It's been amazing to listen to you, and it's really nice to hear someone in your role of patient advocate to be thanking the professionals and the healthcare team, because it really takes a huge team in the oncology care. So it's very important that we validate them and we thank them, because often we don't thank healthcare professionals enough. But it's also very, very important to be empathic. And as a professional, as a healthcare professional, I also feel like it's a powerful tool that we have, just to be empathic with our patients, with the families of our patients. It makes a total difference, either in the relationship that we have with them, and also in the trust that we spoke at the beginning, that we need to create, and we need to have this trusting space with them. So in this sense, they will be more honest with us, and they will be more trustworthy of our words also. So it changes everything. So empathy, I really think it's a great concept, and also very philosophical conversation could be created from this, but let's not focus on that. You've also mentioned the systems, so let's zoom out and look for a moment at the healthcare systems. So from your perspective, what are the systemic barriers that cancer patients still run into?
Objectivity in decision making. It really comes down to that metaphor that you're kind of walking into a store that you didn't want to shop in before. And, no one goes to cancer university so they can get sick one day and then know what to do. It's not like buying a car, buying clothing. You can advance. What do I want to wear? What's in fashion this year? What gets the best miles per gallon? What's the latest phone? You can research these things when it's something you want. This is something you don't want. So that decision making of what do I do now is always still the critical missing gap, because it's unfair to expect someone walking into that cancer store to kind of just know what to do when you're at the mercy of maybe three things on day one, which is whoever your care team is, whoever you're related to, whoever you know, and the internet. And the internet is the worst thing of those three things on day one, because it doesn't serve you any good whatsoever. So the knowledge gap, I'd say, which sounds unfair because it makes it seem like you're supposed to know what to do, but who is going to be the intervention? That's really what's missing right now. I mean, I'm looking at this through the lens of a 30-year cancer survivor, back when everyone kind of just died back then. And now we're living longer and better. And yes, it's a bell curve and nothing's perfect, but the moral arc has bended towards justice with regard to progress and awareness and diagnostics and technology and all the things that make today better than they used to be by comparison. But navigation, I would say, would be the best word that would sum up this whole what do I do now? Because you don't really get a me the day or die. If you know me, I'm sorry you know me because you have cancer, but I can kind of help you figure out what to do in a way that if you had I don't know, like a handrail, or some kind of like a fifth wheel on your car, whatever it is, the fifth leg on the table. I can be that person who can help you figure out, at least in America, how to deal with your health insurance, how to make sure you don't get bilked by your billing, how do you find resources, where do you get help. The navigation model in America is completely fractured. I mean, everything's broken, but like you asked me the question, like, if I could point to one thing, it's knowing what to do when you need to do it. And that's cancer patient navigation.
So our healthcare systems should look more into getting better in that. And in your work, I'm sure you have seen many examples where advocacy from patients, caregivers, or even clinicians has actually helped bridge the gap between those receiving care and those delivering it. Could you share an example if you have one?
Yeah, I mean, there are several examples some are not relevant anymore, but I look at what Stupid Cancer did for the young adult cancer movement, which is, as much as there was a bunch of research and data that suggested X, Y, and Z, we get cancer more, we die more, we suffer more, we cost the system more, we're detected late. All these things were fine. That's great. This is terrible. What do we do with it? The only way to affect that change was to organize. So advocacy didn't necessarily mean awareness. It meant organizing. But it meant awareness in the sense like, hey, young adults get cancer. Yeah, of course they do. Here's the data. What do we want to do and what do we want to happen because of it? So advocacy as an organizing mission of the brand of Stupid Cancer yielded some very tangible outcomes, including the very definition of adolescent and young adult cancer as a billing code, as a standard of care, as a best practice, as a guideline, as a mandate into pre-existing conditions, into employer-based reasonable accommodations, into childcare. We manifested what we needed to see because of that by organizing. There are different ways to think about advocacy as well, because storytelling is advocacy, peer-to-peer support is advocacy, starting a nonprofit is advocacy. But the flip side of that is kind of where we're at today in our country, which is policy is not advocacy. Policy is organizing. And as much as whether you've done it or other people do it, there are versions of this all over the world where you go to talk to your elected officials, you tell them your story, you say, this should happen, and hopefully a bill passes, a law passes that makes it a little better for the citizens. This country is way more difficult because #America, everything is always more difficult here in terms of politics. But where we're at now is we're kind of done with awareness. Everyone knows cancer. Everyone knows diagnostics. Most people know testing. The boogeyman numbers are hyperinflated because, yes, are 2 million people getting sick every year? Yes. We're 1 million 10 years ago? Yes. But of that new 1 million, they're nearly all early stage. That's a good problem to have. I'd rather there be 10 million diagnoses a year and they're all early stage. So let's put that in perspective. So yes, advocacy has yielded better diagnostics, better screenings, better education, better awareness, better public health, better behaviors. But when it comes to policy and insurance, and in our country, this prior authorization, which just gives me hives saying those words, like where the insurance company says, oh, we know better than your doctor, and I'm a dentist, right? That's not how it's supposed to really work. That's not advocacy. That's organizing as advocacy. And that's forming like voter groups and lobby groups and political action committees. Very, very different end of the spectrum of advocacy. But yes, in terms of what I've seen in the breast cancer space, in the early onset young adult oncology, colon cancer space, in the young adult cancer standards and guidelines space, yes, we forced the change to happen because it was critical that we used our stories for that momentum. But it didn't really affect the way the government manages how we are treated based on insurance. And that's the other part of that conversation. So again, advocacy means different things to different people. But for me, at this point now, after 30 years, it means organizing.
That's great. And leaving behind policy and institutions, Patients have always found strength in one another, and as you have said, peer-to-peer is also advocacy, and you have been at the forefront of young adult cancer advocacy. So why do you feel community is so vital in this space in particular?
Well, in the young adult space in particular, we're only 6% of all diagnoses. So it's a microcosmic percentage of all the people that are getting it, which are mostly over 65 years old. And the entire rationale behind there being a young adult cancer movement was for that specific purpose, is we're not better or worse than kids and old people. We're just different and we matter. And age first helps us have a better quality of life. The disease is going to be the clinical part. But I think it was Livestrong that first used the term practical. What are the practical issues you have to deal with as a young adult, even when you're not sick? Dating, fertility, employment, your first insurance policy in America, raising kids, just being in your 20s. That's kind of hard enough anywhere in the world to just be in your 20s these days, but you lop on a cancer diagnosis and that makes it a little extra gravy. So how do you create a movement and a community that's based on age? That was the best use of why it was so needed. And it was kind of a spin-off of what was already working in various, I would say, disease verticals. When I got onto the scene in the early 2000s, there was the breast cancer people, the lung cancer people, the testicular cancer people, the colon cancer people, and there were all the ages and everyone else, but there really was no one like Unitarian church, like where everyone was welcomed, but based on how old they were. And that was what was missing, but it was the best way to sort of say, leave your geography at the door. I don't care where in your body this thing is. I don't care what stage it is. I don't care what color you are. I don't care about any of this stuff. This is about an age group that has so much in common that needs to bond over those common things that are irrelevant and yet tangential to your biology. And it worked really, really well. And we just came back from this year's Stupid Cancer Conference, which I invented in 2008. It's called CancerCon. And there were 400 people in Washington for 3 days. And even though I'm way out, I stepped down 6 years ago and I'm 51 years old now. The magic was still, I hate that it has to exist, but the magic is still there by giving these kids, these kids, right? you know, a chance to not feel alone and not feel stigmatized because they only had stage 1 breast cancer, or they only had thyroid cancer, or they're only missing one limb, right? This is why that level of community matters, the way to think about it. It's perfectly fine. Go to the colon cancer groups. That's where you're going to find out the life hacks of how do you live with an ostomy bag or how do you do these things. But if you just want to be part of your generation here based on, oh God, I didn't tell the girl on the first date I had cancer, but then I told her on the second date she ghosted me. That it doesn't matter what cancer you had. That's a story for that being that version of advocacy and community building. So that was, I think I only give long answers to your short questions, but that to me is the theme of why community matters both horizontally and vertically.
Well, I think you can continue to give me the long answers because I'm loving them, and I really believe that our listeners will also enjoy your answers. And actually, this is a podcast to listen to you, so I'm here just hosting it and giving my short questions to your beautiful answers. So, thank you so much for sharing your perspective on the young adult cancer. Even we have an episode also mentioning and someone who also had cancer at a young age, and the barriers that she faced also, some of them you have mentioned, and also she mentioned that she could not get a mortgage to a house, so it was very difficult because no bank would approve on the loan. And I guess the barriers, they are very similar, and it does not depend on which type of cancer you have. So an age group community is very helpful, and it's amazing that you have created that space, and it's still amazing right now, that all the work that you have been doing. So thank you again for your work. Let's move on to another question, and I would like to hear your thoughts on how have patient communities evolved in the digital area, in the digital era. What's better and what's been lost?
Oh, I think this comes down to trust. And I'm uniquely positioned to answer that question because I was diagnosed when there was no internet. And back when America Online was the kind of the only thing we had, and there weren't search engines and there weren't browsers and nothing really existed where we could have sort of infighting and haters. There were no haters. Life before haters, life before trolls. It's kind of an interesting concept for anyone that's under 30 years old to know what life before haters and trolls was like. And having given birth to stupid cancer and being born of the pre-internet world, I got to witness firsthand its immediate value and its absolutely soaring benefits to society for many, many years. Riding the wave of what is this fancy new thing? What is this Facebook thing? What is this Twitter thing? What is YouTube? And it was the greatest gift. It's what defined an entire generation on the good side of organizing and social media. And I was witness to miracles going on around the world because of Facebook. And we had hundreds of thousands of people on our groups and our pages and our walls and everything like that. And we just hit a button and things got done. And then Twitter showed up and things got done in 8 characters. That's fantastic. And then other things showed up. We rode the wave. Reddit showed up. And then, all these things were just changing the way in which we could globally communicate all good things. And then it all went to shit. So I think that today, with the data breaches and the confirmation bias and the algorithms looking for profits over purpose, it has really contaminated the true value that I saw. So the cautionary tale of any community that wants to organize or be part of something is to be very judicious of what your digital footprint looks like, feels like, is, who you want to know about it, where it's getting sold, and how it affects you as a person. And we talked about this. I think Super Kids were one of the first national cancer organizations in America to discuss your digital footprint. And what that meant back then was that one day your employer or the company you're applying to get a job for will find you on Facebook, see your cancer story, and not hire you. That's how this all started. Be very careful what you post, because I mentioned before on the call that sharing your story can be very precious and very important to you, to your peers, to the world, to helping society be better. But at the same time, it can be very inflammatory because, yes, in America, can they not hire you because you had cancer? No, that's illegal. But can they not hire you because you're not qualified, but they secretly saw that you had cancer on Facebook? What is the 20-year later version of that today? And the same thing is true with, they didn't track your spending habits. They didn't track who you're dating. They weren't serving you ads based on what you were whispering in the corner to your friends. It's a very, very different, mercurial, and dangerous place to be vulnerable and to be supportive. So this isn't like the Mike, get off my lawn, I'm 50 years old guy. This is be aware, because the truth is, if it's free, you're the product and you're the one helping everyone else get rich off your sob story. So be mindful of where you see your purpose, who you want to know what's going on, and where are the safer platforms that are not selling your data the way you think they are. And that, as long as, again, go back to disclosure and transparency and accountability in terms of service, this is where we're at as a global society now.
You're so right. And let's look ahead to what's next. Are there emerging trends in advocacy or storytelling that excite you right now?
Yeah, I can announce on the show that I'll be launching something in America, sort of akin to, and bear with me, the National Rifle Association for Cancer Rights. And we have lobbies in this country for, you know, abortion and gun laws and veterans and all sorts of things. They're called political action committees, PACs. And until recently, this country has never really had an organized cancer lobby. And I'm building that right now. I'm launching America's first cancer patient lobby this fall. It's called We the Patients. It'll be online, depending when this airs, it'll be online by mid-October at wethepatients.us. And our goal is to organize, I mentioned, not advocacy, but to organize, so we can start to fight for specific things that are very different today. And the two most important things that kind of go brushed under the rug in America in healthcare, especially in oncology, also cardiology, rare disease, is that your health insurance company can very easily just say no for no reason, even though your doctor's right, because they want to make money. And denying you and delaying your care makes them money. And the second part is going bankrupt. So two-thirds of all bankruptcies in America are medical, and two-thirds of those are all cancer. So GoFundMe, which most people know worldwide, should not be a cure for cancer. And how do we protect cancer patients from being abused by their insurance companies and abused by predatory billing? So the very idea, which I hope will resonate and sort of spread itself around the world, is every cancer diagnosis has a Miranda right. And for those unfamiliar, Miranda right in America is you have the right to an attorney, a free public attorney given to you by the state, paid for by tax dollars, who is there to defend you, guilty or innocent. Every cancer patient should get a public defender, and their job is to protect you from health insurance abuse and predatory billing abuse. So that is what we're fighting for. We are fighting to create laws in states that create protections for cancer patients so they don't have to worry about the two things that would ruin everything, which is dying because they've been put on hold for too long and losing their entire life savings and having nothing left by living. So that is what I believe the future is going to be around the world, is cancer patients have a right to protections. It's not a right to health care, because that's a whole other conversation. This is not healthcare for all. This is not universal. And much as I love the ideas of what's going on in every other country in the world, pretty much most of them, it's a right to protections, not a right to healthcare. And that's a nice middle ground to think about where that lives and breathes in the ether of other countries. And that way you are guaranteed to be delivered that mall directory or that greeter inside the store who can protect you from the top two things in America specifically that are the bane of all things: going broke and being told no by insurer.
Well, those are very impactful insights. So thank you for sharing, and also thank you for your work. I will keep thanking you for all the episode and afterwards. Um, and if what do you think it would look like if we truly moved from a model of delivering care to co-creating care, where patients, professionals, and systems all are part of the design process?
Oh, wow. And I think about I got a hot take on that one, which is that it probably won't work because academia and science are oil and human beings are water. It has to be a little of both, but it can't be either or. But science is science and people are people. And have you met our species? We're not always the best at understanding science and things like that. So there's going to have to be a bit of a better understanding of to what that would really mean. But the jargon in this country, what's the best acronym? There's so many acronyms. Um, Patient-centered care, that's a jargon. Patient centricity is jargon. Um, Whole patient experience, jargon. It's the idea that patients should be involved in the right parts of the science and the academia, and not all of it. And a great example is trial design, which is out of my league. I'm probably talking way above my pay grade at this point now, not the part of the resort I've been swimming in for the last 20 years. But it's been shown, purportedly, that when the right patients contribute to the design of a study that takes into account all the factors that the nerds in the lab don't understand, like how to get to care, the side effects, how often we should go in for treatment, how much should it cost, how long will it take me to get to the clinic, all these lifestyle, the practical factors of getting into the trial itself. It's like you're basically, that's a good way to think about, like, you're building a widget. How do you know people want to buy the widget? You do market research. You do consumer reconnaissance. You study the market need of the widget before you even think about creating the widget. That's a great use of blending real world human beings and consumers and people into the world of nerd. And when nerd and people work in a way that matters, in that sense where it's not so oil and water, it's more vinaigrette, if I can be so kind, then that's the best use of the answer to your question.
And if you imagine a more human, inclusive oncology system 10 years from now, what does it feel like for patients?
Oh, we're gonna go
Maybe
all Star
also for
Trek here.
families.
I'm gonna go Star Trek. I'm gonna go full Star Trek. Because AI is terrifying and yet inspiring. And people of my generation grew up with the Terminator and movies like War Games, you know, where the robots kill everyone, Space Odyssey 2000. That's our perception is they're going to take over the world and kill us. But can they actually help us, and who's in charge of the data? So let's take out the sci-fi for a second, the doom scrolling sci-fi. I believe it'll eventually be proven that there's a lot more profit in saving people than letting them die. We're going to get to a point of pure health economic GDP strategy. And again, I'm not a health economist. I'm not a money guy. I'm not a GDP guy. But I'm fairly sure we're going to come up with a way to prove in whose interest is it financially that patients actually stop dying and get what they want. Can you still make all the money you want and have us hate you for that anyway, but don't kill us in the process? And I really believe AI can serve a natural purpose in bringing those things together. And my hot take version of that in my little cove here in the corner is going back to navigation. If every cancer patient is given a navigator, but it's the right kind of either human being or some kind of like concierge cancer bot that is like a GPT for navigation. It doesn't need to know everything. It just needs to know what you need to know. It speaks your language. It talks slowly. It explains things in crayon. It shows you visuals, and it helps you do the things. It becomes literally your little cancer bot, not to connect you to resources, but to do the things you need to get done. It fights insurance for you. It makes sure your bank account stays stable. That to me is a great use of AI if it can get to that point. And it's already been proven in the States here that having navigation saves money. Unsurprisingly, but it took a long time to prove it. But having someone there on the day you're diagnosed say, I'm going to help you get less screwed, actually saves the system money. So my optimism in that little cove of non-Star Trek, non-sci-fi robots killing us all is that there will be a harmony soon. That AI can be a potential true solution health economically, GDP wise, spend wise, output wise, and outcome wise.
Well, I hope that works. And Matthew, it's been incredible having you here today. You've challenged us to think differently, and I would like for you to have a last word, and I would like to listen to your message for our audience. One last message.
I would say that advocacy, in however you want to define it, has been the only thing that's ever changed anything. And that it really matters. And that complacency gets us nowhere, but acting up gets us everywhere.
Thank you so much, Matthew. It was amazing having you. And thank you for all the work you have been doing. And this is me thanking you again, I think. And also for reminding us that change doesn't always come from the system. It has to come from us also. And everyone has a role in it. So thank you for having a huge role in everything.
It's been my pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.